morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ and here is your latest weather forecast for the 19th of March 2025. Around Australia, it's plenty of tropical activity up in the north, especially over Queensland, where torrential rainfall has lashed Townsville overnight, leading to rainfall accumulations as a very surprising 350mm around parts of Townsville. Moderate flooding has occurred in Townsville. The rainfall has now begun to ease off, but as you can see on the radar imagery of the past 12 hours, it has been a torrential deluge on and off for pretty much the entirety of the night, with the very heavy rainfall being pretty continuous over the last 8 hours up there. The rainfall is just starting to ease off now, but we've still got a couple more hours of that very heavy stuff coming through into the Townsville area, so the morning commute today is going to be very hairy indeed. And again, if you don't have to do travel this morning, if you've got discretionary travel, such as going to the shops or going to the gym or something like that, I strongly advise you to stay inside throughout the remainder of this morning around Townsville. The rainfall has been incredibly heavy overnight and is expected to remain pretty heavy over the next couple of hours as well. Just how much rainfall they've had absolutely boggles me. It was on the forecast up to around 350mm of rainfall, however, far exceeded even the most extreme forecast numbers, and it's just because they were right on top of the convergence zone. So all of those northeasterly winds that were streaming all of that moisture in from the northern parts of the Coral Sea has met that southerly change, and as such we've had that stagnant band of thunderstorms just sit itself over Townsville, and it's really not even been a band, it's just been a glob of thunderstorm activity just sit itself over the top of Townsville overnight, and it's led to some pretty extraordinary rainfall accumulations. I mean, we've been talking about rates of around that 50 to 70mm an hour mark, and once you start seeing those sustained for many hours at a time, which is what we've been seeing right throughout Townsville, you start to get some pretty impressive numbers, that's for sure. So again, the highest accumulations have been up around that 350mm mark. The widespread accumulations still are almost as heavy. They've been between 250 out to about 300mm around Townsville, and we have had some moderate flooding in the Ross River. In fact, the river levels earlier this morning did peak at nearly major at some locations along the Ross River. They have since started to drop a little bit. The rainfall is now beginning to ease off in the Ross River area, but it certainly is starting to get very heavy around the Townsville area once again. The rainfall accumulations there not expected to pipe down anytime soon either. This rainfall will take a couple more hours to clear out of the Townsville area, and you can see on the forecast models they've absolutely nailed it here. Heavy falls moving through the Townsville area and heading very slowly towards the southeast, where we are expecting the rainfall to pick up around Guru and then down towards Ayr and Home Hill later on this morning and into early this afternoon, and then further on into this afternoon that convergence zone will then begin to weaken off, but we will still see some moderate to heavy falls further down the North Queensland coastline, potentially as far south as Bowen. Also feeding into this convergence zone, which you can think of almost its own tropical low pressure system, is plenty of rainfall, some moderate to heavy falls lining up on the southeastern side of the system as well, streaming up through the Whitsundays and into the North Queensland coastline around Mackay, and especially up around Proserpine area as well. We have had some relatively heavy falls in these areas as well, up around that 70 to 80mm mark overnight. That again is paling in comparison to the rainfall that we've seen around Townsville, but it has led to some moderate flooding around the Proserpine River, and I'm expecting that flooding to continue in the minor or the moderate levels later on today as well. And this rainfall here is nothing really to be concerned about. I mean, we're not talking about very significant rainfall rates here, and they will be getting themselves closer to the coastline as well throughout the remainder of today. The rainfall isn't expected to be that much of a problem though. It's just light, moderate stuff, tending very heavy at times in some isolated showers, but again, it isn't really anything concerning, especially when you compare it to the Townsville rainfall that we've had overnight as well. But yeah, moving very slowly towards the southeast, which means locations such as Guru and Ayr will be the next ones in the firing line, and I imagine those in Guru right now will be able to testify for this. The rainfall rates are now beginning to very slowly pick up in those areas as well. Ayr might take a couple more hours. I am actually concerned about the Burdekin River as well. I'm expecting minor flooding as a result of this in the Burdekin River because of the rainfall and how the Burdekin catchment also works as well. We're already starting to see some rises in the water levels down towards Charters Towers, and there have been significant contributions to the water levels around the Burdekin River as well, around Guru, and I'm expecting some of these river levels to begin rising pretty shortly as well. I mean, Guru doesn't actually have the Burdekin River moving through, it has the Horton River, but this plain through here just towards the southeast of Guru does feed right into the Burdekin River, and there will be some significant contributions throughout the remainder of today through the Burdekin River as well. So again, holding our breath through there, certainly some significant contributions to the Burdekin River. It's very similar to what the Horton and the Ross rivers have already experienced, and I'm expecting minor to moderate riverine flooding to be a problem throughout the remainder of today through this part of North Queensland. In terms of future rainfall accumulations, we're definitely on the backside of this rainfall event here, but certainly still some more significant falls can be expected, and I'd expect 3-hourly rainfall accumulations throughout the remainder of this morning to be up around that 100mm mark. So we're not writing off total rainfall accumulations up around 450mm, which could lead to the chance of 500mm 24-hourly accumulations around some areas of Townsville. That is a very rare feat for Townsville. That sort of stuff is normally only reserved for far north Queensland. We did actually highlight that as the worst case scenario around the Ingham Birmingham and the Cardwell area. It's just a bit of a shame that the convergence zone has pushed that forecast into inaccurate and moved it about 100 kilometres further south, and as such that convergence zone has been a real problem for Townsville overnight. So whilst this rainfall was on the forecast, we weren't necessarily expecting the heaviest stuff to be around Townsville, and that's the joy of making tropical weather forecasts. The things can change like that, and I mean, I never saw this coming on the radar, that's for sure, and I imagine it took a lot of people off guard last night, and I imagine a lot of people around Townsville are waking up to some pretty soggy backyards and some pretty big puddles around. So again, discretionary travel around Townsville not recommended this morning. If you got to take the kids to school, if the schools are even open, I'm not actually sure what the situation is around Townsville right now. I wouldn't be surprised if kind of an emergency state has been declared because of the amount of rainfall. But if you've got to take the kids to school, you've got to go to work, just make sure you're taking extra care on the roads. They will be very dangerous and very slippery this morning. And stay away from flooded areas as well, because water levels could rise very quickly still throughout the remainder of this morning and into tomorrow, into this afternoon. By tomorrow, though, the conditions should be continuing to clear out. There's still a lot of moisture around in the Coral Sea, but it'll be moving down towards the southeast and then further out to sea, deeper out into the Coral Sea. But for now, it looks like it is a really nasty and wild picture around Townsville. Far north Queensland, though, is looking partly cloudy throughout the remainder of today, actually. There's not an awful lot in the way of rainfall and showers heading up there, and in fact, the rainfall is expected to ease off throughout the remainder of today. A few showers and thunderstorms expected for far north Queensland today. A few showers also expected tomorrow and in towards Friday as well. But it looks like for the next couple of days, we've got a bit more of the calmer conditions up there. Again, it does kind of turn for the worst, the weather forecast, at least for the last week of March, and I'll get to that in a later part of the forecast update. But it certainly looks like we're going to have a lot more tropical moisture up in far north Queensland, and potentially another bit of a rainfall event similar to what we had in January or February earlier this year. Of course, not as extreme, but just with the amount of low pressure and convergence zones that we're expecting to develop here on the forecast models, or that are actually developing on the forecast models, I would not be surprised if into the back couple of days of March and into the first couple of days of April, we had some pretty significant rainfall up here in North Queensland. Again, I'll get to that in a later part of the forecast update. Other interesting nuggets happen around Australia's tropics right now. We do have that tropical low, or very broad tropical low pressure system in the Gulf of Carpentaria. That's now actually moving into the northern parts of the Northern Territory now, into the northwest of the state, and that's supported by wind observations, which are just starting to wrap up into a tighter low pressure system somewhere around the Queensland Northern Territory border, around the coastline there. It looks like this low pressure system, it's never going to become a full-blown tropical low, let alone a full-blown tropical cyclone, so we can pretty much discount all concerns that we have there. It was never going to do that, but again, the chances have been pretty much eradicated throughout the remainder of today, and we're expecting this low pressure system to tighten itself up a little bit more as it heads further inland into the Northern Territory. Plenty of moisture expected for Western Queensland over the next 24 hours, also plenty of moisture expected through Thursday and in towards Friday as well, and in fact we could be seeing some significant 3-day rainfall accumulations up to 200 millimetres for locations between the Queensland Northern Territory border as far east out towards Croydon, Maxwellton, and then down towards Winton as well. I believe that's Winton, yeah. So that includes locations such as Mount Isa, but especially for Julia Creek and Cloncurry. They seem to be the wettest locations on the forecast right now, and you can see rainfall accumulations throughout the remainder of this week looking very healthy for some of these locations as well, with falls up to around 150 millimetres expected through some of these locations. So again, plenty of very good rainfall expected out to these desert communities. They do desperately need the rainfall, that's for sure, and a good wet season deluge also expected this weekend out into the interior parts of the Northern Territory Friday, Saturday and Sunday around Docker River and then Tennant Creek, and as far south as also Alice Springs we could be seeing some good rainfall down there. Rainfall accumulations anywhere between 15 out to about 50 millimetres also expected around Ayers Rock, and then further south down in towards interior parts of South Australia. It is just going to be a very moist and wet picture across interior parts of the Northern Territory, parts of Queensland and South Australia. We're definitely heading into a bit of another monsoonal burst as we get into the last 2 weeks of March, and that's what's driving all of this moisture across interior parts of the NT and then SA, and as such this moisture is going to be relentless. It's definitely going to be sticking around for the next week or so, and plenty of rainfall can be expected as a result in normally quite dry communities, and you can see in towards the early parts of next week as well, plenty of rainfall expected to continue building across interior parts of the Northern Territory as well. So whilst we will have a couple of wet days through Friday and Saturday into interior parts of the Northern Territory, we're also expecting Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday the 24th to the 26th of March respectively to be quite wet out there as well, before the rainfall eases off for the Northern Territory side of things. Good falls also expected along the coastline up around the Darwin area, where we could be seeing up to around 250 millimetres over the next 10 days, and rainfall accumulations also expected to build into the last couple of days of March and into the first couple of days of April as well, where we could be seeing another 150 to 250 millimetres between Sunday out to about Wednesday the 30th of March to the 2nd of April, respectively there. So again, some interesting stuff happening on the forecast. Plenty of rainfall for the Northern Territory, parts of the Gulf of Carpentaria coastline as well, and over towards Western Australia. I mean, this is 14-day rainfall accumulations now for Western Australia. We do have a tropical low developing offshore, and I'll get to the cyclone forecast in just a moment, but it is moist time for Western Australia, and whilst this rainfall is generally only provided to the WA coastline through tropical cyclones, this rainfall is going to be provided through an absolute swathe of tropical moisture that's going to be beginning pretty much from now. We're expecting showers and thunderstorms to dominate the Pilbara and the Kimberley region tonight and also in towards tomorrow. It's going to be a pretty turbulent picture there, and then showers and thunderstorms pretty much relentless throughout the Kimberley region throughout the end of this week and in towards this weekend. Low pressure systems will then begin to develop offshore from WA through Sunday and in towards Monday the 23rd and 24th of March, and this low pressure system will drag in a lot of moisture from the Pilbara coastline. We're expecting moderate to heavy falls throughout the remainder of next week from Sunday the 23rd of March right through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and out towards Friday as well. Moderate falls expected to be lining the Pilbara coastline and even down into the northern parts of the Gascoyne as well. And whilst the heaviest falls will be concentrated around the coastline, we're still expecting some good showers and thunderstorms into interior parts of the Pilbara region as well, and we cannot be riding out week-long rainfall accumulations between Friday the 21st and Friday the 28th of March up to 500 millimetres around some of the wetter locations such as Marble Bar. Now these sorts of locations here throughout interior parts of Western Australia, these are historically some of the driest locations not only in Australia but also in the world. Some of these desert communities here can go years without getting rainfall. I was about to say weeks without getting rainfall, but some of these places can go legitimately years without getting any meaningful rainfall at all. So to have week-long rainfall accumulations here along the coastline up around that 200 to 300 millimetre mark here, which is effectively speaking a year's worth of rainfall for some of these locations, it is also reciprocated between major forecast models, so the certainty of this happening is quite high at this point. And communities such as Marble Bar, which whilst they won't be receiving the heaviest of falls consistently, considering the chance of hours upon hours of moderate to heavy rainfall is going to be occurring down around the Marble Bar, the Telfer and the Nullagine area, and then down in towards the Hamersley Range as well around Newman and Tom Price, we could be seeing some isolated week-long rainfall accumulations up around that 400 millimetre mark, which I know is completely different to what the forecast models are suggesting right now, but that's how the rainfall works up here. The forecast models will have a hard time kind of dealing with it right now, at least on the forecast, and I imagine the trend for this rainfall will continue to increase over the next couple of days. Again, this is just a projection right now. Things can happen, things can change in the forecast modelling, so we will keep a very close eye on this, but certainly a good amount of rainfall expected for interior parts of WA, and this will certainly cause major rivers such as the Ashburton, the De Grey River as well, just to name a few, the Augustus River. We could be seeing some very significant contributions of water to those rivers, and as such some pretty significant flows could be expected into the last couple of days of March and throughout the entire month of April. These rivers, whilst they can fill very quickly, they take a long time to drain and they can flow at a dramatic level for a very long time indeed. This is an excellent forecast as well, especially as we take the forecast out a little bit further and you see some of that rainfall developing a little bit further for the Karanjini National Park. For people that are looking to go away and towards the winter months of this year towards Karanjini, which in itself is often a beautiful place in winter, this is an excellent forecast to people that are planning those sort of trips. This rainfall is going to be very helpful to bringing out the desert bloom, and especially in towards the earliest months of winter, so late May and towards early June, it'll be great travelling up around Karanjini because of this rainfall. So those grey nomads, you can get very happy about this rainfall here. It certainly looks like some good stuff is on the forecast. And another factor for West Australia is, in the long range, we are expecting tropical cyclone activity. Already in the short range, we've got Invest 91S, which is the official designation of the tropical low around the Cocos-Keeling Islands right now. You can see it's actually pretty much right on top of the Cocos-Keeling Islands, West Island to be specific, and it is developing itself up quite nicely. It's still a very elongated low-pressure system, and you can see that because it is dragging in a lot of moisture on the southern side of the system here, so not a full-blown tropical cyclone. However, it does have a hot chance of becoming one over the next couple of hours. You can already see wind observations up at the Cocos-Keeling Islands airport gusting up to 67 kilometres an hour. So this storm here nearly has tropical cyclone force winds, and if we take a look at the forecast models here, whilst this system heads very slowly towards the south over the next couple of days, if it is able to develop its eastern side more robustly, we're expecting this system to become a tropical cyclone potentially Thursday or Friday. The chances of this system doing so right now are about 50-50. Whilst it could do it, it could also fall completely flat on its face. It also looks like wind chill will give this system an absolute hellish time as we get towards towards the later parts of this weekend and into early next week. That low pressure system that we've also been talking about for the last couple of minutes, providing that rainfall, especially through the early parts of next week, Saturday and Sunday, the 22nd and 23rd of March. Offshore from WA is expected to wrap itself up a little bit as well. And whilst we're not expecting a full-blown tropical cyclone, it will certainly, as it heads offshore from the West Australian coastline, so through Tuesday and Wednesday, the rainfall will be at its heaviest for locations between Carnarvon up towards Karratha. It'll also bring some gusty winds for some of these coastal locations as well. And then through Thursday and Friday, the system peters out pretty much completely. And then later on into the forecast period, we're going to see a tropical low develop sometime between the 28th of March now to about the 31st of March, whether it's immediately offshore from the Kimberley coastline or if it's well offshore from the Kimberley and the Pilbara coastline out to sea in the Indian Ocean. We will see a tropical low develop by the looks of things and then head for the West Australian coastline. The Eastern River has had a powerful tropical cyclone on the cards for the last couple of days, and you can see it here. Even though this is a relatively weak system, it's still certainly a threatening system to the West Australian coastline, and certainly one worth a watch, that's for sure. The GFS has also had a pretty significant tropical cyclone heading down towards the Gascoyne and the Pilbara region as well, making a landfall on Exmouth actually as a storm with a pressure of 950 millibars. We'd probably be talking about a Category 4 strength system here, with winds up around that 120 km an hour, gusting to about 170 km an hour. This is quite a concerning aspect of the forecast, especially considering the GFS has had this on the forecast for the last couple of days. And normally when I look at long-range tropical cyclone activity across the Pilbara region, I scream boogies. I just scream that this is just a load of horse poop because, I mean, more often than not from the GFS forecast, the long-range stuff can be a load of trash. But in this case here, it actually looks like it's got a little bit of a backbone to it, and it actually looks like the GFS might be onto something. So for those between Carnarvon up around the Karratha area, not only do you have that tropical low to be watching between Sunday and Wednesday this week, but I'd also imagine that you should be keeping a pretty close eye on the forecast much later on into the forecast period as well. Of course, right now it goes without saying that this is a watch but don't act situation, and there's going to be no need to act on this storm until at least Tuesday or Wednesday next week. So again, just chill out and don't expect a tropical cyclone to happen, because if you do expect one to happen, they're not going to happen, and if you don't expect one to happen, then they will happen, and vice versa. So again, just make sure you are ready, or not ready for the system, but make sure you are watching the forecast quite closely. Things can and will change in the forecast, and you want to be the first to know, then please do consider subscribing to the CyclonesOZ channel. And then just pulling this forecast back to about the 26th of March, we're already starting to see a bit of an enhancement in the rainfall up across North Queensland. You can see here, it kind of is working in the opposite way. Normally we see these low pressure systems and the moisture head from the east over towards the west, but in this case here, we're expecting all of the moisture that's going to be dominating the WA scene towards the later parts of next week and into the Northern Territory scene as well to be heading from the west over towards the east, and we're expecting an enhancement in moisture over parts of the Gulf of Carpentaria, which could lead to a tropical low developing there sometime around the 27th or the 28th of March. And this has been pretty robust in the forecast modelling as well over the last couple of days, and it does look like something is going to begin to develop in the Gulf of Carpentaria. What we are expecting is a broad low pressure system to develop in the Gulf of Carpentaria, which will then extend out into the Cape York Peninsula and then out and towards Queensland. And whilst we're not exactly sure of the specifics in terms of rainfall timing, amounts and onsets across North Queensland throughout the later parts of next week and into the first couple of days of April, we could still be talking about some very significant rainfall up there through convergence zones, low pressure systems and the monsoon trough. This looks like an ace setup here for some pretty significant rainfall, so certainly something worth talking about in a future forecast update. And for far north Queensland, I want everybody to be in the know right now that there could be some pretty significant rainfall on the cards into the back couple of days of March and into the first couple of days of April. I'm not going to go in depth on this forecast right now. You can see in terms of rainfall accumulations, there are already some pretty significant numbers being thrown around. We're talking up to around that 400 or 500 millimeter mark, and that's completely plausible from a rainfall event like this. And between major forecast models as well, the modelling is very similar in terms of amounts and also in terms of timings. So again, we will look at this in a later forecast update, probably in tomorrow morning or in towards Friday morning as well, and I'll go really into depth with it in this weekend's forecast updates as well. But right now, there's no real need to panic. The main situation is rainfall currently occurring around Townsville, and that was a rapidly developing situation last night, and certainly some very significant rainfall has been reported, which is still currently ongoing. So just to summarise, over in far north Queensland, some heavy showers still continuing through this morning, then it's going to be a couple of days up to about a week of dry weather. And then it looks like later on into the forecast period, some heavy rainfall will be setting in up there as we get beyond about the 27th or the 28th of March and into the first week of April. Certainly some significant stuff on the forecast, that's for sure, and keeping the forecast scene very busy across the tropical parts of Australia. We didn't even get to the winter weather or the non-tropical stuff across the southwest of Western Australia, or even in towards the south parts of Victoria and Tasmania as well. We've left them out completely this forecast update, and I'll touch on them in tomorrow morning's forecast update as well. If you have enjoyed the video, then please consider subscribing subscribing, and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. The support lately has been much appreciated, and again, I could not thank anybody more than the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now. Any feedback, please do let me know in the comment section down below, but that is all from me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.